Hi, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of the Fintech, where I interview people that I just think are interesting. On this episode, we've got Jason McKinney, who has just recently joined a new firm. You can give your introduction because it's all a bit interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, recently just rejoined
Yeah.
FSCOM as an associate director. I'm heading up their staff augmentation practice, which is a new practice they're running.
Oh,
So yeah, all quite interesting.
that is really interesting. The staffing augmentation piece of consultancies has been so hit and miss for so long. Once it's done right, it's amazing, but quite often it's not, and it's not got the right people in there.
That's kind of it, I suppose. Where what we want to do is just really leave businesses better than when we came in. That's the only goal. So we have set up a team. We currently have 9 employees in the staff augmentation team based in the newly established Derry office in the northwest of Ireland. So yeah, it's all really exciting. But
Yeah.
I think, as you say, there's a real wave of increased sort of regulatory scrutiny. There's uncertainty about costs and budgets and revenues for a lot of financial services firms. So sometimes it just doesn't make sense to hire full-time resource to deal with the problem.
Stop saying that to a perm recruiter. It feels like hate mail.
I apologize. I should have read the room.
I'm staring daggers at him if you're not watching.
I thought that. I thought, am I talking too long? But no. So that's kind of where we're looking to fit in, is just temporary of increased periods of increased regulatory scrutiny. Increased pressure on the business, help with backlogs, help with some cool projects that clients are looking to do, launch new products, and they just need the right resources for the right time period in a cost-effective manner. So that's kind of where we're aiming to.
Yeah. I mean, I have to echo it because Ian Ian Christie, everyone, contract recruiter extraordinaire, has been so busy over the last 18 months. Like, near a break at all. So it's been quite interesting to see the market shifting into that. And it's because I agree, the uncertainty in market, they can't go offering perm jobs when they don't really know what's going on. But why I think you're so interesting, apart from being a lovely man, is you're one of the few senior people in market who started in consulting, went into industry, went back to consulting. Quite often when I'm talking to senior people in consulting, they want out, they want to go back in-house and use all of their wonderful experience that they've got. So I thought a very quick run through of your career is really interesting, because the other fascinating point to me is you were a little baby MLRO.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah.
So Jason started in law firm straight out of university, is that right?
Yeah, a couple of law firms straight out of my legal masters in Belfast. Always my master's was in international financial markets law, so always had a real interest for capital markets, payments, banking. But went sort of the traditional route of trying to become a solicitor. Was working in a property department, portfolio management for a good law firm in the north of Ireland, and I got really good experience there, but I just realized quite quickly
it's boring.
Yeah, well, it just wasn't for me, I'll say. The diplomatic answer. Heard of this? It was actually a friend from who I went to university with was recruiting for this new sort of graduate program that was launched in Belfast from a company called FSCOM. He talked me through it and he said, "Look, I think you would be a great fit." Introduced me to the hiring manager and had an interview like a week or two later, and that was when I was sort of first introduced to the wonderful world of fintechs and crypto.
And was it 2018 or something, was it?
2018, yeah.
That is honestly revolutionary. The fact that they had the grad scheme, a new consultancy, and up in Belfast is like mind-blowing.
Yeah, at the time, I think for me as well, it was, you want to have the cool job in the friend group, you want to
have a bit of I do financial crime actually, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, the first sort of interview I went to, I was, speaking to, it was actually Jamie Cook, the CEO, who took the interview. And it was just, they talked me through what they'd done, talked me through kind of who their clients are. And to me, it was just amazing that this firm existed in Belfast, was really committed to hiring.
Oh, it was so
locally.
London-centric then. Do you remember? Like, I remember recruiting in those years, and if someone even wanted to be in the region, from the regions, or out, out of London, or never in Ireland, it just was impossible to get them a job because all the centres, we were 5 days a week, for those who remember, in those days. So out of London was unfathomable. We won't spend too much time on that, but I am curious, as a young consultant, what your biggest kind of learning was. Like, I imagine it was very eye-opening, but what kind of did you take away from that experience?
Just the variety of products that financial institutions offer.
Yeah.
So they could have a similar license or the same license, but the way their product works, the way their product operates, the types of risks that they're, that each individual firm is subject to is just vast, right? It's, it really is no one size fits all in the fintech or crypto sectors. And I think for my first, 6 months, I was doing audits. I was very fortunate, actually. I was auditing a different sort of financial institution pretty much every second week.
Yeah.
So just that scope of experience, meeting different MROs, different heads of compliance, seeing different systems. I think that was my biggest learning.
And if someone's in that space at the moment and they're junior in a consultancy, what's the one thing that you did that made you stand out? And don't be humble, please. Stay into an Irishman, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. I'm already sort of going red here. I think what I really enjoy regulation, understanding regulation now. I think what I did really well was rather like really focused on the practical implementation of the regulation. So when I went to sort of each institution, it was taking a wee bit of like what I thought they did well, what I thought they could have done better, and sort of just taking that with my own experience and then comparing it maybe in the next client engagement. And, I think that's kind of where I tried to differentiate myself, understanding the business itself, understanding the control infrastructure, and trying to find sort of improvements or potential sort of pitfalls that they might have not thought about yet. So that's kind of where I tried to set myself apart. I will say this though, I was extremely fortunate with the the managers and the people I had around me. So my at FSCOM, Evan McKini was my line manager. Tony Brown was a senior manager there at the time, and Phil Creed and Jamie Cook, Alison Donnelly all sitting in the one office.
That is crazy talent, isn't it?
That is kind of where I believe you get, it's osmosis, right? It's just knowledge transfer. It's being around them, listening to their phone calls, always ready for a bit of advice, particularly to the sort of junior people as well. So I think that I was really lucky in that.
I don't know about luck. I don't necessarily believe in luck. Right. Okay. This is the nitty gritty question, guys, that I really is so wonderful. Remind me again, how old were you when you got your first big dog senior role in Orbital? This is the next job, by the way. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So I was 20. So I started at FSCOM at 23, spent 2 years in consultancy, and then at 25, I think I was turning 26 that year, I jumped into industry with a company called Orbital. And I was the global compliance manager and deputy MRO for that firm.
You're the guy that I write LinkedIn posts about. When I write this post and I stop hiring juniors to be senior people. Yeah. How did it feel jumping feet first into a job like that? And how big was, set the context, what do they do? How big was the company? So
I was working for their payments institution in the UK.
Yeah.
A pretty decent client book, big names, offering just pure remittance services, and then branched out into payment accounts then a little bit later on. They're currently focusing on the stablecoin industry at the moment. That was kind of transitioning as I was leaving, but at that time it was just pure sort of remittance and payment accounts. So it was obviously a bit daunting.
How did you get it? Was it a tap up or an interview?
So a bit of both. So Anthony Brown, Tony, our mutual friend, he was joining the firm as a director, and he was going to take the MRO role, and he needed somebody that he kind of knew and trusted, and reached out to me. Then I had to do a couple of sort of interviews with sort of the key people in the institution. So that's how it came about. It was about a month-long process before we actually,
normal though,
yeah.
And then you progressed into the MLRO, I assume, when Tony left?
Yeah, so Tony left the business and joined in our UK EMI, and there was a bit of a vacancy there. So then the guys offered me to sort of step up into the MRO role, because we had built a pretty good team there.
How many people did you have any direct reports?
Yes, we had 4 direct reports at that time.
Older or younger than you?
Slightly older, around the same age.
Honestly, you have some gumption. Guys, if you could see 26-year-old me, you would be like, do not give this girl anything to do with interaction with people. So 3 questions that I've got for you that we can fluff our way around. What was the difference from going from consultancy in-house?
Yeah.
What was the difference between the deputy MLRO to the MLRO role? And how did you find the balls to do all this? Because it's scary.
Yeah. I suppose the biggest difference between sort of consultancy and in-house is it's a different kind of pressure, right? So in consultancy, you're so focused on doing a really good job for the client, delivering a really good sort of product, using your time efficiently, and you carry a lot of those traits into the in-house work. I think the biggest difference is probably stakeholder management with the board, because and there's an element of that in consultant too, but it's slightly different. So I think for me, probably stakeholder management was the biggest difference. Reporting to a board.
Yeah.
Talking to heads of sales who were
at that age as well. And I don't mean to, I'm just amazed that someone could talk to a head of sales who are evil. No, they're not evil, but they've got their own agenda and their own pressures, and they've got some, forgive me, but some young guy saying, well, no, we can't put that through. Yeah,
I think, again, Orbital hired very well.
Yeah.
There was a head of business development and a head of sales. Fortunately enough, they were, 2 really good guys, put their points across quite nicely, where, they may have disagreed with my assessment of the risk, but it was always a real collaborative approach. So kind of learned a good bit there. Don't get me wrong, there was obviously...
Okay, I'm narrowing my eyes at him like, what's he not telling me? Yeah. Okay. But when you moved into the MLRO role, I assume you had to have interviews to do that? Or was it kind of like they just said, hey, do you want this role?
It was kind of that, yeah. Do you want to sort of take it on for an initial sort of 6 months period, see how we go, and sort of keep a bit of continuity in the team? That's kind of what we done. It was kind of a seamless process, I would say. There was a lot of stuff that I was doing already that kind of...
probably had you succession planning anyway, if I know Tony.
Yeah. I think there was an element of that. So
yeah.
Obviously you do have those sort of questions at the time of like, do I have enough experience for this? Have I seen enough? Have I...
Who did you workshop that with when you were kind of making the decision?
Typically it would have been my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, but her and just myself, really. I
you give me contemplative guy vibes.
Yeah. Pensive.
Pensive Irishman.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you stepped into the management role, you're already managing the team, and it was kind of just an extension of the role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a bit of an extension. I suppose the biggest difference was probably the decision making element.
Yeah.
So prior to that, you were just making sort of recommendations on, compliance strategy, managing budgets, onboardings, transaction reviews. That ramps up a level when you're the one making the decision. So I suppose that's kind of where the inexperience probably plays a bit of a role. And you're looking for, you just have to sort of be confident in yourself, try and make the right decision.
Did you have like a group? I know there's like WhatsApp groups of MLROs. Were you in one of those, or like Tony maybe?
Yeah, Tony, Evan McGuckin, Phil Creed at FSCOM as well. You know, they were always kind of there at the end of the phone if I wanted to sort of run something by them, ask a question. There was also a really amazing product guy that was working at Orbital at the time, Jason Panacker, who's still in the industry today, and he's gone on to do amazing things. And he was a really good sounding board, and a really good sort of support function.
Because I think when we're talking about the downfall of the junior MLROs, it's the vanity of getting that title also feeds into the ego of not asking for advice.
Yeah.
And so if you're, or perhaps you're in a firm that doesn't have support, it's really important that they reach out to people that they trust and ask questions. It's not a sign of weakness. I know senior MLROs who still ask advice.
Yeah.
Not from me, but.
No, I completely agree. Your best ideas come from, you know, conversations, bouncing your ideas off other people and seeing if they stand up. And, you know, you might get a different thought from somebody that completely recalibrates how you've looked at something. And, you know, we do, as you say, echo chambers aren't a good thing, particularly not in compliance, where there's a lot of sort
of devil in disguise, those.
Yeah, exactly. So I took advice on, you know, different things far and wide, did my own research, and then always kind of tried to piece together what the right approach was. But like junior MROs, and I was very junior, it's just having that support system around them, the right people in the firm. It also largely turns on the size and complexity of the firm as well, that, you know, can sometimes cause a bit of issues. But all in all, I think there was a really good support structure around me at that time, and I got really good guidance, learned some lessons, you know, made some decisions you would probably do differently now in this, you know.
I think if a senior MLRO even says that to me, I'm like, you're lying. You do not make the right call all the time. No one does.
No one does. And, you know, it's about sort of, I have a very sort of, I don't know if it's egotistical, but I try and always want to sort of get better, just be really, really improved.
What do they call it? A growth mindset.
A growth mindset, yeah. And,
me too.
You know, just try and get better, re-examine your decision making. And it's kind of led me to sort of where I am today. So I wouldn't change it. As I got older, you know, I've changed my approach to some things. I've, you know, changed how I sort of communicate, changed how I write, you know, changed how
that's a muscle that's flexed, right?
Exactly.
The more you use it, the more you engage. AI is going to ruin that for everyone. And so when you decided to leave Orbital, was it because you'd outgrown the role perhaps? Or I know that some candidates that I talk to feel like because they've grown up in a firm, it's very hard to kind of push to the next level because they always see you as that junior guy that came in.
I kind of had a thought of, I always had a loose plan. So I always thought I'll spend a couple of years in industry. I'll learn as much as I possibly can. Get some management experience, get some experience dealing with senior stakeholders. Then I would always sort of transition back to consultancy. But I always wanted to sort of work at quite a sort of global firm that had licenses all over, and you would get a different sort of sense of how different teams work. So when I seen that Airwallex was recruiting, that was my next role.
And for the uninitiated, what does the Airwallex do?
Airwallex is a massive sort of global. It's an electronic money institution in the UK. That's who I was employed by. But broader, it's an acquirer, e-money issuer, and has sort of a massive array of licenses globally.
And also really renowned, not to fluff your feathers here, but really renowned for hiring top talent.
Yeah.
And people don't try and leave, so it's tough for me. Okay, and so was that how old were you then? 27?
Yeah, 27 or 28, I think, when I started.
You're lucky you can grow a beard and stuff, because if you looked a young 27 and you went in for interview, can you imagine the people you're up against in that interview? I can imagine.
Yeah.
Like really seasoned kind of. What do you think made you stand out in that interview or to get that job?
it was a pretty sort of practical discussion around like hands-on experience with different industries. I think the consultancy background at FSCOM really helped.
Amen. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was kind of it. Was more the practical implementation that I had done for the couple of years at Orbital. So I think that really helped. And they were sort of going into a period of rapid expansion, and they wanted somebody to come on and just muck in and get on board.
I suppose it's actually quite helpful. You're like that sweet spot at that stage because you've got a couple of years experience of still being hands-on enough and strategic enough for a firm that size.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps if you were interviewing against the big dogs, they had been too theory-based or they'd been too up, strategy, and they'd not done a case review or they'd not QA'd anything for a long time.
I think the structure at Airwallex was really good. Had, really good people sort of that I was directly reporting into. They had an amazing sort of legal and regulatory team there, who I learned a fair bit off as well. So there was a really good sort of support structure there again, where you can sort of draw learnings from different people. So I think at that time I was probably with my level of experience, a bit of practical hands-on, I think I was probably just what they were looking for in that role.
I'm sure you're what everyone's looking for.
Don't know about that. Yeah, like that.
And so, okay, and when you were doing sort of the role, was it a huge step up going into one of these global firms, or was it really just time, what you're doing times of it?
It was definitely a step up, a step up in terms of scale, size, transactional volumes.
But were you panicked is what I mean. It's like, were you pooping your pants? At the shared level, because it's like for me, the analogy would be if I went from like a small recruitment agency into a massive big dog one, I'd go, oh my God, like there's so much to learn. There's so many different moving pieces.
I think, there's obviously an element of imposter syndrome of like, should I really be doing this? They're huge. They're really well thought of. The team there is, you speak to them and it's, you're sort of.
Yeah. Did that manifest at all for you, like in like behaviors, or because I know myself when I was a young manager, I wasn't good.
Yes and no. I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed the challenge, and I suppose it's always kind of that approach of we'll have a go, we'll see how we get on, and any feedback we get, we'll take it on board, try and make improvements where necessary.
You give the energy where it looks like it's hard to ruffle your feathers, if I'm honest. Maybe externally.
Yeah, maybe. Just a ball of stress underneath it all. But no, I think, I think as long as you sort of do the work, be really sort of open to feedback, open to improvements, I think you can sort of gain those couple of % every month and, get better. So I think that was kind of my mindset at that time.
And again, was your team younger or same age, older?
It was a real mix. So there was some younger, some older, and a lot of experience for me to lean on across sort of the wider business.
Very politician answer. Did you ever get any pushback at this stage in your career? Because it's now not that you're junior with no experience as an MLRO. You're junior, young, but you've got an experience. So you should have the confidence to push back on these people. Did anyone ever say anything about your age or experience?
Not so much. I think there was a lot of different sectors. I didn't have as much experience servicing different sectors and stuff, whereas other people did. So there was sort of
automatic respect almost because of what you do.
Yeah,
and
I
market
think
you're in here.
Yeah, so I think there was pushback on like you need to go away and really understand what this sector does, who they are, what the sort of frameworks around it is. And I think that was, justified, because if you've never touched a particular market sector, then you need to become au fait with it quite quickly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so how long were you there for?
I was there just about 2 years.
Just about 2 years. And then you've gone back into consulting?
No, so I joined back to kind of a smaller payment institution, which was the Fintech group, my EU
Oh
pay.
yeah,
Yeah,
Tony. Yeah,
yeah,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah. So Tony once again. So yeah, Tony was recruiting again for an MRO
Yeah,
for
you're
a.
like a star pupil, aren't you? Like he loves it. But why wouldn't you? If you knew someone that could work their ass off, was smart and like really good with stakeholder engagement, yes, please.
Yeah, so he reached out again. It was a couple of month conversation. It was a different sort of opportunity to any I've done before, because we were really invested in building a team sort of back in North Ireland, and we were really focused on developing talent and, you know, bringing people into the industry that probably wouldn't have that.
Just like what had happened to you all those years ago.
Pretty much, yeah. It's kind of that. Well, that was the model we were working on, and we were just trying to replicate, giving people good opportunities.
Can I ask why you chose? No, you're in Derry now, but why you chose Ireland as the focus for that talent pool?
There's just a massive talent pool there. There really is. I think there's big operation centres there. There's big consultancies there. You know, PwC have a big presence there. A company called Fintech has a massive presence there, and a lot of others. And there is a massive talent pool in that part of the world. And you know, it's just, they might not have had exposure to fintech, but they have had exposure to financial services, big banks, and they can take what they're doing and, you know, replicate it for, you know, slightly smaller financial institutions.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to be said, the cost is a lot lower. Like KYC analysts now, guys, should be getting, with 3 years experience, 65K. So I can only imagine, as a business, if you're trying to set up onshore financial crime operations hubs, it must be incredibly expensive from the get-go.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's obviously a factor in London. You know, back home it is obviously slightly less barriers to entry with cost and stuff.
But also less competition. Like if you that, you know, if you were hiring someone in London who was really good, you're competing with every institution down here. But not everyone has their eyes on Ireland.
Yeah. And
yeah,
that was it. There was we set up in Derry, and we were kind of one of probably the only payments company based in the city. So, and we were driving a compliance and operations center there.
How big is Derry? Sorry, forgive me.
Oh, it's not massive.
Like, is it as big as Shoreditch or bigger?
Probably a bit bigger. Yeah.
And so, and is there? I assume there's a university there that you can pull
There's
from?
a great university in the town, University of Ulster, McKini campus, who has, you know, a really sort of solid presence, good student numbers, and offers, you know, a whole host of sort of a lot of relevant courses to finance, accounting, fintech, law.
But how amazing for those students to have, because there's such a gap in the market at the moment for graduates. They either need to move abroad for a lot of money, or they need to move away from home for a lot of money. So to have something on their doorstep that can really set them alight with a career is amazing. Yeah,
that's kind of what we've been pushing for the past couple of years. And again, it was really exciting about, you know, rejoining FSCOM recently, and setting up that Derry office with the team at FSCOM is giving sort of local talent the same opportunity I had when I joined FSCOM, you know, those years ago.
So we'll talk about that in a second, but just on the going to Derry with FSCOM, did you have to pitch them? Did you say, well, I had really great success at Fintiva, but the model's been proven before, or were they already kind of eyeing up that space?
I think the discussions I had with them was, you know, they were very open to it and they supported it from the get-go. As I said, there's a really good talent pool there, a good university, a sort of a good opportunity if we wanted to sort of start the grad pool, or, you know, continue with the grad pool or expand it into the managed service or staff augmentation side of the business, then it was there, and we could do it quite seamlessly. So I think it was always part of my sort of vision for the business, or why a big part of why I rejoined was to sort of lead that in conjunction with Phil Grad.
This is the weirdest thing that you've done. Going back into consulting, this, you know, as we spoke about earlier, people tend to go out. But I'm going to be honest, guys, I know a little secret. Jason has always not done consulting, because I've always just picked up the phone and said, "Can you do this?" And you say, "Yeah, I can do that." So you were kind of developing something on the side anyway. You were in at Fintiva, right?
Yeah. So I spun out Compliance Guard in September last year, which is my own sort of consultancy business. So I resigned as sort of a full-time employee of Finteva, started up Compliance Guard, took on a couple of clients, and ran that until about April.
I was gutted when he said he wasn't going to do it anymore. He was like my go-to, like, "Can you do this like weird and wonderful thing?" Yeah, sure.
I spun out my own consultancy, and was working on that for about 7 or 8 months.
But you were developing a product when you were there as well, right?
Yeah, so I was developing a RegTech solution, and I was developing that along with my brother-in-law, John Morrison. And what started off as kind of like a risk assessment tool, quickly sort of expanded into a couple of different other modules. We have taken that same development across now to FSCOM, where we're developing a benchmarking tool for...
Is that what they were talking about at the last conference when they had that tool? I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, so that we're developing a benchmarking tool that will, give financial institutions a really good insight into where they stand with their, their control infrastructures.
Yeah, especially like newer fintechs where you're not necessarily surrounded by like the Knights Templar giving you advice. And so how is that a free tool, or do people need to sign up to an FSCOM kind of?
So it will be released shortly. We don't have a firmed up release date, but there'll be communication coming from FSCOM.
And they acquired you, or they?
No, we just joined. We joined
and
FSCOM and had the tool. We joined FSCOM. Compliance Guard is now just a brand of FSCOM. So
cool.
Yeah,
not bad for 6 months' work, my friend.
No, look, it was really cool. We were doing a fair bit of work with Phil Creed at FSCOM, and yeah, we were working on a couple of different projects for that period as well, and then it just made sort of sense to rejoin the mothership, as it is. And
and so when we're talking about AI, and I'd actually love your perspective on a few things here. You're gonna have to give me free consultancy advice though.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
You guys can pay for the subscription podcast. When using AI, what's the one quick win or easy to use thing that a small or startup firm, because obviously it's obvious, I think it's obvious for banks what they could be using AI for, right? Everyone kind of knows. But if you're a smaller institution, what should they be leaning on AI for?
It can be really useful at sort of summarizing regulation, pulling out key points, as long as you feed it that information. And
well, I saw an MLRO using Claude the other day. I won't name this person. To look at the workflow process and like the risk assessment. It was doing like amazing onboarding.
Yeah.
Like but I was saying to this person that if I did it, I wouldn't have got the same result.
It's all about the prompts,
yes.
I think, and you have to have a really good understanding of what you're looking for the tool to do to get the right output. So the input in the prompts is so important, and I think you're going to have to constantly prompt up to what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, so you can't just hire a junior and say, go use Claude.
No, definitely not. There has to be guardrails there, and each different financial institution will have its own sort of view on how they integrate AI, how they use AI. But my advice would be establish clear guardrails, use it where you can get the most benefit out of it. If it's, summarizing data, if it's, you might not necessarily want to put client data into it, if it's summarizing regulation, or if it's, evaluating something for you.
Maybe cross-checking your policy against a regulation, that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So it's effective guardrails. It's understanding where your sort of line is with it. And it's, completely understand it first.
Can you use it for transactional analysis if you're a Excel queen and still doing it that way?
I suppose you could. Again, it's just down to
making sure you've got the right prompts in there.
The right prompts. Does it completely understand it. You have to assess, you know, if you're putting transactional data into the tool, what's the sort of data protection overviews of that? Yeah, so
probably none.
you do kind of have to be careful with it, but you know, there's a lot of third party tools and third party service providers that you could use that have AI, you know, co-pilots in them.
Okay, another question. I'm starting up my fintech, and I'm going through my license application.
Yep.
How much could I expect to pay through using like a ballpark figure for consultancy to use that, which I encourage people to do?
Yeah.
And why would I use consultancy to do that versus trying to use a law firm or do it myself or whatever?
Yeah, I think this is quite timely. So the FCA delivered a speech recently just on the use of consultants and licensing applications, and you know, it was sort of pro consultancy. I think a ballpark figure, it depends on the type of application, depends on the product offering, you know, the time and materials it would take to get you where you are, where you need to be for a license application.
That's not an answer.
Yeah, it's
sorry, I feel very 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm more thinking like for the general public. This isn't like a quote for businesses to say you're going to say it costs this. I'm just like, I think people need to be aware that it's a really costly process to even get.
It does take significant investment to get a license. Whether it's, you know, developing your tech stack, hiring the right people that you need to submit an application to the regulator, consultancies, PII insurance.
Does it cost to do the application? You know, like visas. Does it cost?
It costs. Yeah.
How much?
It again depends on the license. Yeah.
You've been such a consultant right now.
I'm just saying.
But is it in the thousands, hundreds, or tens of thousands?
It would be in the thousands. Yeah.
Okay, fine. And you were talking about the FCA speech the other day. Actually, I need to go have a look at that because that's really interesting. Because you and I have a lot of conversations at Think Select. Obviously, I do a lot of financial crime recruitment, particularly with MLROs in the senior level, and particularly with new startups going through license applications.
Yeah.
And I think it's insane for them to hire a full-time MLRO pre-license, particularly if they're using somewhere like FSCOM to do the application.
Yeah.
And then you've got someone on 130 grand holding the baby, basically doing onboarding while they wait for the application to go through.
Yeah.
So what was the FCA's view on fractional MLROs?
You need to have an MRO in situ for when you go live.
To have it on the application, right?
The FCA will always kind of take a practical approach to this. They will expect you to hire somebody. Is there somebody in-house that can sort of wear two hats? Do you have a director with, you know, decent experience that can potentially wear two hats as a COO and an MRO while you ramp up? And then having that sort of fractional MRO support you through the process can be sort of submitted as part of your application as this individual is with us, is supporting X amount a week. When we go live, we'll ramp that up to this amount, and you know, we'll continue to scale as we need. It's just showing the FCA that you have that clear hiring plan. And fractional MROs, interim roles to help you sort of get set up, help you go live, and then have a really clear staffing plan of when you plan to either make that a permanent individual 5 days a week, you know, full time.
Yeah. And there is a really, really strong candidate pool now of specialists who just do license applications. You used to be one for me.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time until you ran away. So if you ever need help with that, I'm your girl.
Yeah.
And going back to sort of your combination of having in-house and consultancy experience, when you were in-house, not necessarily at the firms you're in, because that would be unfair to talk about that, was there ever anything that you thought was like wood for the trees? You could see it so blaringly obvious when you go into firms, but they're walking around doolally that it's just, or do you think firms generally know what they're not doing well?
I think all firms, particularly the ones I've dealt with and worked with, do have a pretty clear indication of where they need to improve. Now, the level of improvement needed can sometimes be, you might think, well, this needs done yesterday, and they might think that that's not that big of an issue. We can sort that in X amount of time. Some issues you typically see can be around, you know, documentation, not being reflective of how good they actually are in practice. You know, they might be doing 10 extra things that's just not written anywhere in policy, and therefore you can't show it off when your auditors come or when you're speaking with your regulator.
That's the thing, right? Like in practice, if you've in the last 6 months hired a shit hot head of KYC, for example, and they've really upped the process, but the process not been documented, It's all just hearsay.
Yeah. And I think, the talent in the industry and the caliber of people working within the financial institutions here is really good, quite high. And when you speak to them, they know where they need to improve. They know where they need to sort of allocate their resources. It's just the manner in which they do it, and how they allocate the relevant resources and the right resources.
Is there a common thread? Because, I mean, I see it from my side. It's financial crime operations just letting the team down. No kidding. It's not usually operations guys. It's usually come down, top down. But is there a particular space or something that you just want to shake the tree and say, I wish you guys did this a bit better?
Yeah, I think enterprise-wide risk assessments has become quite a topic of conversation. And I think there's so many sort of different approaches to them. There's, a enterprise-wide risk assessment should really be...
sorry. Sometimes people don't know what that is.
Yeah, so a business-wide risk assessment, enterprise-wide risk assessment, or AML risk assessment is kind of the cornerstone of your compliance framework. So it is essentially a catalogue of your risks, where you believe what the inherent risk score is, what controls you've mapped against them, and therefore what you believe your residual risk score. So it should be treated as like a really good snapshot of where you are as a business in terms of your overall anti-money laundering risk or overall business-wide risk.
It's giving AI could do.
It is something...
Like, could you not just plop documents and say map?
You definitely could.
But should you?
But should you is the question. I think at the minute it does need...
But that does seem like in the next 5 years, that will be one of the things that will be a little bit more automated.
Absolutely. And it could be something we're developing with our tool. So, yeah, we have looked at that.
Yeah.
And, we are developing a risk assessment manager as part of our, benchmarking tool as well that firms could use. Yeah. So...
and like, okay, because the other thing that's forever, I was saying in a little embarrassing market update that I did on LinkedIn the other day about monitoring, testing, and assurance being like now grouped together as a whole function. So there used to be 3 separate functions for God knows why, and now people are asking, like, rightly so, for people to doing all of that together. Do you still see that as being a problem? Like, why do people not do it properly
in terms of how they structure?
Like just what you're talking about before, like having policies and procedures. No one's actually checking that they've been done.
It sometimes can just be down to sort of workload, resource.
Yeah.
The properly defining your 3 lines of defense model is really, really crucial. And having those sort of relevant sort of segmentation of duties is important. And, sometimes firms can experience rapid growth and those lines become a bit blurred and they stand up a new team and things like that. So, in terms of that, I think clear ownership, proper governance will always sort of rectify that.
So, like you say, it's a resource thing, though, right? And it's also a tough job going and like lifting the hood on people's like areas. They don't want to help usually. Like, please don't catch me out. I'm doing that. Okay, so to wrap up, I've got 5 questions for you.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Perfect.
Business you've worked with the best compliance financial crime team?
The team in my UPay.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
The one thing that you think people should be worried about this year?
Probably around CDD workflows, EDD workflows, just from the thematic review that came out recently from the FCA.
It's all been offshored. Funny that. The best book or advice that you've had for your career?
Best advice I think I've gotten was actually from my dad, is just give it a go and see how you go.
There's not like, honestly, guys, we're living in like a game. It doesn't really matter what we're doing. No one's going to die. Hopefully.
Well, yeah.
I know that Tony's been, and sort of Phil Creed and things have been really inspirational bosses, but outside of like your direct sphere, you talked about the product guy. Is there anyone else that's really kind of impacted your career, and how did you build that relationship with them?
Yeah, I think Evan McGuckin, probably. He was my first manager at FSCOM. He spent a couple of years in industry as well, and is now back at FSCOM. But he's had a big impact on my career in terms of, helped me develop, always being a really good sounding board, sort of how to look at things, how to sort of manage tricky situations. He's always kind of been there as a really sort of solid presence. So I think, Evan Evan, Phil Creed, Tony, Jason Panacker, I think, are probably the guys that I have really enjoyed working with the most.
So they're all quite commercial as well, which is quite interesting. If you're looking at their thread of personality, all quite commercial backgrounds. They're not like, they're not just rule book kind of people.
No, and that's I think each one of them has a really sort of different approach to things and different skill sets, and I think that's why I've probably lent on them and annoyed them for the last couple of years with questions.
I can't imagine you're annoying. And final question: if you could tell little baby you one thing, what would you tell him?
That's a tricky question.
It's a tricky one.
It's a really good question. I suppose I would probably just trust your gut, trust your instinct, and you'll be all right.
Exactly. Right. Just to wrap up, as someone was making fun of me saying that no one knows what FinSelect does, which if you've been living under a rock, we are a financial crime and compliance search agency. So I do senior hiring and perm. Letitia, who works with us, does reg compliance and also a bit of fin crime. And Ian, the other Irishman I know, does temp hiring. So now you know. I'll try and remember to say it each time. But thank you very much for coming along. It's been really fun.
Thank you for having me, Jess. Thank you very much.